So, to start with, I apologize for the quality of this video. This is my first video that I'm uploading, and doing something like this is a learning process for me. This was a recording from my live stream, so it was off of my crappy streaming camera, and I hope to get better, and I appreciate your patience. I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted for this video. I uploaded about 8 years ago. I had done a tutorial on ink drawing that was for one of my college classes, and I got rid of it after the assignment was over because I was so nervous about having a video out there with my voice on it. At the time, I barely posted on social media either, just because I didn't like presenting myself in any way on the internet. So this video is sort of like me testing the waters to put myself out there. So this isn't necessarily a tutorial or an advice video. I always felt like because I'm still learning, I don't have much to teach others. But I think it's also important for artists to share what they're learning or their creative journey. So I like to consider it as co-learning, if that makes sense. I want to share what I do during my sketching process, my opinion on the types of things you should be drawing, and other tips I've picked up about keeping a sketchbook. I'll admit that I'm a slow learner when it comes to art, being a freelancer or whatever else, so I'm hoping that this will be useful to others like me. I want to start with sharing my sketching process that I do in my free time. I'm sure you've heard this advice before, whether you're a beginner, a hobbyist, or a professional, that it's important to always practice, and use references. I would have teachers tell me that we had to be drawing constantly, like any moment that you got. Always be drawing from life, use reference photos, what have you. The point of this is to learn how to visually study a subject and translate it into whatever you're doing. But that's a video for another time. It is extremely good advice, but I realized that when I did practice all the time, I was leaning too far into realism. I was just practicing, and I wasn't using it to explore how I wanted to illustrate. I was also kind of boring. Just drawing figures over and over, quick poses, or long studies, it's necessary to do, but I rapidly lost enthusiasm for it when I wasn't breaking it up with other things. It was also what I learned from school, and my head got stuck in that assignment, homework mentality. Some of you may relate to this, or some of you might be thinking that if you can't do the work, then you're not going to get far. And you would be right, but I wanted to share how I made it fun and interesting for myself. It's very easy to get burnout, especially creative burnout, and it's a constant process in figuring out how to mitigate that for yourself. So anyway, as you can see, I was doing some practice on drawing possums, which are so cute. I love drawing them in my free time. They're such funny little things. I was using reference photos, which is important to do for any project. I think it's perfectly fine to use Google Photos or Pinterest, which is what I did here. A general Google search for possum pictures, possums screaming, families of possums, or possums just chilling out. Sometimes it can be a bit difficult to find the opportunity to draw from life or take your own reference photos. So I wasn't drawing from memory necessarily, but I started adding things to the drawings I was doing, or just taking a moment to doodle in between practice. This gives me a break to try and use what I just learned from reference to inform how I might illustrate something, like the possum's fur pattern, their fluffiness, the structure of their head. It's important to understand the form and structure of something and then to stretch and bend that form to what you like. I also find it fun to just add a thing here or there just to give it a little flair. I didn't want to draw just possums. For example, I have this little witchy possum. The head was completely from reference, but then I added the little arms during the cauldron and added the hat on top. Or my hiking possum. It was only the head and the arm. I think the reference photo had like somebody picking up the possum. But then I just kind of played around with the rest of the image of adding the hiking stick and the little backpack. It's also important to find things you enjoy for drawing reference or practice. I'm sure there's plenty of you who've done still life practice with like a bowl of fruit, or maybe you found knickknacks around your house, or maybe like a vase of flowers or something. I can't think of anything worse for your creativity than forcing yourself to draw things you don't care about. I made this mistake in my younger years, thinking that, if I wanted to be an illustrator, I had to be able to draw everything, practice all kinds of stuff. I quickly learned that I did not like doing anything mechanical, anything with complicated machine parts. It was just so tedious, but I thought I had to do it to be prepared to take any job that came my way. That's not to say that these subjects are boring, but they're just not for everyone. Focusing on interests keeps you in your creativity, and it's a way to help you shape your style. For example, I like drawing creatures, especially those that lean towards horror. So I like to draw a lot of skulls, unconventional animals, and I use reference photos of injuries or gore, especially when I'm doing something that's like undead or it's a zombie. Or sometimes I use medical illustrations to reference bone structures. People would be uncomfortable to draw these images or to even look at them, would be absolutely miserable if they had to do it all of the time. Sometimes it can be too much for me, so I take a break and I'll paint other things that I like flowers or landscapes. It's important to give yourself a break every once in a while with your typical subjects. It also took me way too long to figure out that it's okay to draw fan art or to mimic the art style of other people, whether it's for fun or if you're doing like some kind of research. It's honestly very common among artists, but that's a whole nother video as well. In regards to keeping a sketchbook, I've always been of the opinion that you don't need to keep anything fancy for sketches or practice. Especially if you're new to this, buying expensive paper or pencils are not what will make you a good artist. Practice will, and you'll be going through a lot of paper. Your sketchbook is also not a sacred space. That sounds kind of bad. What I mean is that in this age of social media, I see a lot of people with sketchbooks that are practically works of art. They're perfectly laid out, filled with color and great composition, and I've known other artists that keep sketchbooks like this, but I don't find it practical for working through ideas. It's your place to make mistakes and try different things. Every corner should be filled with not just sketches, but notes or ideas too. It's not a place for final work, and I've never thought it should be treated as such. A small story. I had this art history class in college that was run by my studio professors. The usual professor was away on a trip, so the first couple of months were handled by my other professor who never taught the class. He was a good teacher, a great painter, which is what he usually taught, but he really missed the point of what the art history class was for. He was one of those that thought your sketchbook should be beautiful, and he required that we kept a sketchbook for our note taking. He also wanted us to illustrate it alongside our notes, and we would show our pages every few weeks. I wasn't totally against this. I mean, who doesn't doodle during lectures? But he was very serious about having a layout and everything. You can guess what happened. A lot of people struggled with taking notes during class while simultaneously trying to plan out and compose how they would illustrate each page. And many people didn't have time to illustrate a sketchbook that was completely separate from the other sketch pads they were using for studio classes. A lot of people failed the tests or scored extremely low, and they had messy sketchbooks, which he was really disappointed in. And our returning professor was not thrilled at the progress the students had made. The point of this story is that sketchbooks should be kind of messy things, used for learning. And if you want to keep a nice sketchbook, that's something else entirely. Anyway, this is a little all over the place, but a part of my goal was to get myself comfortable in making something like this, and to just share a few things that I've picked up over the years. I have a few ideas for future videos, a studio tour, and maybe some process things. Let me know what you'd like to see. I hope you all enjoy the rest of this video, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.